Deep in the heart of Nigeria's Benue state, where the undulating hills cradle whispers of the past and the moonlight dances on the river Benue, a man named Chike received an invitation that would change his life forever. The note, sealed with crimson wax and written on parchment that smelled faintly of roses and old books, carried a single, chilling line: "Come if you dare, your life may never be the same." Chike stared at the words, a knot of curiosity and unease tightening in his chest. It wasn't every day a struggling journalist received an invitation to one of the most exclusive parties in the country. The sender's name, Madame Oluchi, was as enigmatic as the contents. She was rumored to be the widow of a powerful magnate, her wealth and influence stretching far beyond the borders of Nigeria. Yet, what truly intrigued him were the whispers. Whispers of her mansion, hidden deep in the wilderness, where no man ever returned unchanged. The road to the mansion was an unforgiving labyrinth of shadows and ancient trees that seemed to reach for the sky. Chike's small car groaned as it climbed the steep path, each turn revealing nothing but a denser thicket. As he approached the wrought iron gates, they swung open on their own, their eerie creak cutting through the silence. The mansion loomed ahead, its grandeur defying the isolation of its location. It was a sprawling structure of sandstone and obsidian, adorned with intricate carvings that depicted scenes both majestic and grotesque: warriors battling shadows, women with piercing eyes and serpentine hair, and a sun that seemed to weep blood. A figure emerged from the shadows, a man dressed in traditional Tiv attire, his ochre-painted face expressionless. Without a word, he gestured for Chike to follow. The air grew heavier as they approached the mansion, and Chike felt an inexplicable chill crawl up his spine. If you are fascinated by stories like this, please like this video, and subscribe to Afro Tales TV to keep the telling of African stories alive. The grand hall was a spectacle of opulence. Crystal chandeliers illuminated an array of guests, all dressed in the finest agbadas, ankaras, and gaily adorned with gold and silver embroidery. Yet, it wasn't the luxury that caught Chike's attention. It was the women. Everywhere he turned, their presence was magnetic, dozens of them, their beauty otherworldly, their smiles razor-sharp. They moved with an almost predatory grace, their laughter melodic yet disquieting. Madame Oluchi appeared at the top of a sweeping staircase, her crimson gown shimmering like liquid fire. She was radiant, her face a canvas of timeless elegance, yet her eyes held secrets that could drown a man. Raising her glass, she spoke, her voice commanding yet strangely soothing. "Welcome to my sanctuary. Tonight, you are not just guests, you are participants. Drink, dance, and let the night take you wherever it may. But remember, the mansion has its rules. Break them, and you may not see dawn." The crowd erupted in applause, but Chike's hands stayed at his sides. He scanned the room, catching glimpses of the women's faces. Their eyes held something that didn't match their smiles, something ancient, something dangerous. A servant handed Chike a drink, his face unreadable. The liquid in the glass shimmered, a deep shade of violet. Chike hesitated. Before he could take a sip, a woman brushed past him, her voice barely a whisper. "Don't drink it. Whatever you do, don't drink it." She vanished into the crowd before he could respond, her words lingering like smoke. Chike's heart raced. He topped the glass onto a passing tray and made his way to the edge of the room. He needed answers. Who were these women? What was this place? And why did he feel as though unseen eyes were watching his every move? As the evening progressed, the air grew heavier with a sense of foreboding. Chike wandered into a corridor lined with ornate mirrors, each reflecting not just his image but something else. In one, he saw a shadow behind him where there was no one. In another, a woman's face, a face he didn't recognize, stared back at him, her expression filled with unspeakable sorrow. At the end of the hallway, he stumbled upon a room slightly ajar. Inside, a tapestry hung on the wall, its vibrant threads depicting a story he couldn't quite understand. Women with faces like those in the hall surrounded a man kneeling in terror. Above them, an Ouroboros, a serpent devouring its own tail, encircled the scene, its eyes glowing faintly. Before he could step inside, a hand gripped his arm. It was the woman who had warned him earlier, her face pale and her eyes wide with urgency. "You don't understand," she whispered. "You're not a guest here. You're prey." If you find this story captivating, please like this video and subscribe to this channel. Your support means we can tell more African stories and share diverse perspectives that celebrate our rich cultures and histories. Thank you for being a part of this journey. Prey. The word sent a cold shiver down Chike's spine, and he found himself frozen, staring into the fear-stricken eyes of the mysterious woman. Her grip on his arm tightened as the mansion's gong reverberated through the air, commanding an unsettling silence. The music stopped. Conversation ceased. Even the flicker of the chandelier seemed to dim under the weight of the sound. From the grand staircase, Madame Oluchi appeared once more, her commanding presence suffocating the hall. Her crimson gown shimmered under the faint glow, her eyes scanning the guests like a hawk surveying its prey. "Welcome to the game," she said with a sly smile, her words punctuated by a sinister undercurrent. "The rules are simple: survive until dawn. But beware, the mansion is alive with its own will, and it does not take kindly to intruders." Her words drew audible gasps from the crowd. The air shifted, heavy with dread. Chike's pulse quickened as he exchanged a glance with the woman beside him. "What does she mean?" he whispered. "She means," the woman hissed, her voice trembling, "that the hunt has begun." The chandeliers flickered violently, plunging the hall into near darkness. When the lights returned, the doors leading outside were gone. In their place, smooth walls stared back at the panicked guests, sealing them in like rats in a trap. The room itself seemed to exhale, its ancient structure groaning as though awakening from a long slumber. "What's happening?" someone shouted, but no answer came. Madame Oluchi descended the staircase, her every step deliberate, the clack of her heels echoing ominously. "You'll find that this mansion has a mind of its own. It shifts, it deceives, and it devours. Choose your allies wisely, if you choose at all. The walls have ears, and even your thoughts are not your own." As she spoke, the crowd began to disperse, driven by equal parts terror and confusion. Chike stood rooted, his instinct screaming at him to run, though there was nowhere to go. The woman tugged at his sleeve, urgency etched into her face. "Move. If you stay here, they'll find you first." "Found you," she purred, her voice like silk over steel. Chike stumbled backward as the figure advanced, her steps deliberate and predatory. Nkem grabbed his arm, pulling him toward a hidden passage behind one of the shelves. "Run," she hissed. They dashed into the passage, the walls closing in around them as the sounds of pursuit grew louder. The air grew colder, the darkness pressing in from all sides. Just as they thought they'd lost her, a faint laugh echoed through the passage, chilling Chike to his core. "She's not far behind," Nkem whispered, her voice shaking. "And this is only the beginning." If you find this story captivating, please like this video and subscribe to this channel. Your support means we can tell more African stories and share diverse perspectives that celebrate our rich cultures and histories. Thank you for being a part of this journey. The darkness in the passage seemed alive, pulsing with an oppressive energy that pressed down on Chike's chest. His breath came in shallow gasps, and every step felt like it echoed into infinity. Nkem gripped his wrist tightly, her eyes scanning the narrow corridor as though expecting the walls to spring to life. Behind them, the faint, taunting laugh of the woman who had found them reverberated like a sinister melody. "She's playing with us," Nkem muttered, her voice barely audible. "They always do." Chike swallowed hard, gripping the dagger he had taken from the room. Its ornate blade seemed to hum faintly, as though it too were alive. "Where are we going?" he whispered. To the core, Nkem said, urgency etched into every syllable. It's the only way out of this nightmare. The passage opened into a vast chamber unlike anything Chike had ever seen. The walls were covered with hundreds of carved faces, each one twisted into an expression of terror, rage, or despair. The air was thick with a metallic scent, and the faint sound of whispers danced on the edge of hearing. This is the hall of faces, Nkem said grimly. The souls of those who failed the trials are trapped here, etched into the stone. Don't look at them too long, they'll try to pull you in. Chike averted his gaze, his heart pounding as he followed Nkem through the chamber. But the faces seemed to move in his peripheral vision, their mouths opening and closing silently, their eyes pleading. One face caught his attention, a young man whose expression mirrored Chike's own fear. For a moment, their eyes met, and a voice, clear and desperate, echoed in his mind. Help me. Chike stumbled, clutching his head. Nkem spun around, her expression alarmed. What did I tell you? Don't look at them. They are alive, Chike whispered, his voice shaking. Not anymore, Nkem replied, pulling him forward. They are just echoes now. Keep moving. At the far end of the chamber stood a colossal stone door, its surface engraved with symbols that seemed to writhe and shift under the dim light. A deep groove ran along the base of the door, stained dark with what could only be blood. Nkem approached the door, her face pale. Every trial requires payment, she said, glancing at Chike. The dagger, you need to use it. Chike looked at the blade in his hand, its intricate patterns glowing faintly as though in anticipation. Use it how? You have to give it blood, Nkem said, her voice heavy. Yours. He froze, the weight of her words sinking in. You can't be serious. It's the only way to open the door, Nkem said, her tone unyielding. It doesn't need much, but it needs to know you're willing to sacrifice. If you don't, we stay here until they come for us. Chike hesitated, every instinct screaming at him to turn back, to find another way. But the sound of footsteps echoing in the distance spurred him into action. He pressed the blade against his palm and winced as it broke the skin. Blood welled up and dripped onto the groove at the door's base. The symbols on the door flared to life, glowing with an intense, otherworldly light. Slowly, the massive stone slab began to grind open, revealing a staircase spiraling downward into darkness. The air grew colder as they descended the staircase, the faint light from the chamber above fading until they were enveloped in pitch black. The only sound was the echo of their footsteps, punctuated by the occasional creak of the ancient stones. What's at the bottom? Chike asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The core, Nkem replied. It's where the mansion's power resides. If we can reach it, we might have a chance to end this. Might. Chike repeated, his frustration bubbling to the surface. There are no guarantees, Nkem said sharply. You're here because you wanted answers. Now you have to earn them. Before Chike could respond, the stairs ended abruptly, depositing them into a cavernous room lit by a faint, pulsating glow. At the center of the room stood a pedestal, and on it rested a small, intricately carved box. The light emanated from the box, its surface shifting and shimmering like liquid gold. This is it, Nkem said, her voice tinged with both awe and fear. The core. It's the source of the mansion's power. If we can destroy it, we can break the cycle. Chike stepped closer to the pedestal, the box's light reflecting in his wide eyes. How do we destroy it? Nkem hesitated, her expression conflicted. That's the problem. The core is bound to the mansion and to us. Destroying it might free us, or it might kill us. Chike's heart pounded as he stared at the box. The light seemed to draw him in, filling his mind with whispers and visions, faces, memories, fragments of lives that weren't his. He reached out, his fingers hovering over the surface. Wait. Nkem shouted, pulling him back. Once you touch it, there's no turning back. Are you ready for that? Chike met her gaze, his resolve hardening. If this is the only way, I don't have a choice. As he placed his hands on the box, the room trembled, and a deafening roar filled the air. The light surged, engulfing them both in its blinding glow. The moment Chike's fingers made contact with the box, a searing light erupted from its surface, consuming the cavern in an almost divine brilliance. The roar that filled the air was not just a sound, it was a presence, ancient and wrathful, pressing down on them like an avalanche. Chike's body convulsed as the light coursed through him, and in an instant, he was no longer standing in the cavern. He found himself suspended in a swirling void, surrounded by shadows and fractured images, faces screaming in anguish, battles fought in the dead of night, and a massive serpent consuming its own tail. The visions were overwhelming, threatening to shatter his mind. Chike! Nkem's voice pierced through the chaos, pulling him back. He gasped for air, his knees buckling as the glow from the box dimmed slightly. The cavern was still trembling, cracks forming in the walls as the mansion itself seemed to groan in protest. What's happening? Chike stammered, clutching his chest. You woke it, Nkem said, her voice shaking. The core, it's aware of us now. And it's angry. The ground beneath them shifted violently, and Chike barely managed to stay on his feet. The walls seemed to ripple, their one solid form twisting and stretching as though the mansion itself were alive. The faces carved into the stones appeared again, but now they moved, their mouths opening wide to release haunting wails. We need to destroy it now, Nkem shouted, grabbing Chike's arm. Before it consumes us. Chike turned back to the box, but it was no longer glowing faintly, it was pulsing, each surge of light sending waves of energy that rattled the room. His instinct screamed at him to run, but Nkem's words anchored him. How do we destroy it? He yelled over the cacophony. There's no one way. Nkem replied, her voice frantic. The core feeds on the mansion's power, and its victims' fear. We have to cut off its source. But, she hesitated, her face pale. But what? Chike pressed. It might require a sacrifice, she said, her voice barely audible. A life, to end the cycle. Before they could act, the cavern erupted in chaos. The air grew thick with shadows, which coalesced into monstrous forms, twisted, inhuman figures with glowing eyes and razor-sharp teeth. They emerged from the walls, the floor, even the cracks in the air itself, their guttural growls sending shivers down Chike's spine. They're coming! Nkem screamed, pulling him toward a narrow passage that had appeared behind the pedestal. Chike followed, his heart pounding as the shadows pursued them with terrifying speed. The passage twisted and turned, its walls alive with writhing tendrils that reached out to ensnare them. Nkem led the way, her movements swift and desperate, while Chike struggled to keep up, clutching the dagger tightly in his hand. Where does this lead? Chike gasped, barely able to speak through his labored breath. Nowhere safe, Nkem replied. But we don't have a choice. The passage opened into another chamber, smaller but equally disorienting. Every surface was covered in mirrors, each reflecting not the present but fragments of the past. Chike saw himself in the reflections, standing at his desk, reading the invitation, walking through the mansion's gates. But as he moved, the images shifted, showing alternate versions of himself, ones where he turned back, where he drank the violet liquid, where he stood frozen and was consumed by shadows. This is the reflection room, Nkem said, her voice hushed. It shows you what was, and what could have been. Chike approached one of the mirrors, transfixed by an image of himself lying lifeless on the mansion floor. His stomach churned, and he tore his gaze away. Why are we here? Because the core wants us to doubt ourselves, Nkem said, her tone grim. If you give in, it wins. As she spoke, one of the mirrors shattered, and from the shards emerged a shadowy figure. It resembled Chek but twisted, its features warped and its eyes glowing a deep crimson. "It's you," Nkem said, backing away. "Your worst self." The doppelganger lunged at Chek, its movement swift and predatory. Chek raised the dagger instinctively, narrowly blocking its attack. The clash sent a shockwave through the room, the remaining mirrors vibrating violently. The fight was brutal and chaotic, each strike from the doppelganger forcing Chek to confront his fears. It whispered in his ear as they fought, its voice a venomous hiss. "You'll never make it out," it taunted. "You're weak. You don't belong here." But as the battle raged, Chek found his resolve hardening. He remembered Nkem's words, "The core feeds on fear." With each strike, he pushed back against the doubt, the anger, the self-loathing. Finally, with a surge of strength, he drove the dagger into the doppelganger's chest. The shadow screamed, its form dissolving into smoke. The mirrors shattered all at once, their shards dissolving into the air, leaving the room eerily silent. Nkem approached cautiously, her face a mixture of relief and concern. "You did it," she said softly. "But the core isn't done with us yet." Chek retrieved the dagger, its blade now glowing faintly with an inner light. He turned to Nkem, his expression resolute. "Then let's finish this." As Chek and Nkem pressed forward, the dagger's faint glow grew brighter, illuminating their path through the labyrinthine mansion. The air itself felt charged, crackling with energy as though the mansion were alive and aware of their intentions. The oppressive whispers that had haunted them throughout the night were now a deafening roar, words of warning, threats, and desperation intermingling in a cacophony that made it hard to think. Chek's grip on the dagger tightened. He could feel its weight, not just in his hand, but in his soul, as though it was absorbing his fear, his doubt, and replacing them with an unyielding determination. "How much further?" he asked, his voice cutting through the chaos. "We are close," Nkem said, her tone steady but strained. "The core is trying to stop us. That means we are on the right path." Ahead of them, a massive door came into view, its surface pulsating with a dark, otherworldly energy. Symbols etched into its surface glowed faintly, their patterns shifting like the ripples of a disturbed pond. This was it, the heart of the mansion. The door swung open on its own, groaning like a beast in pain. Beyond it lay a cavernous chamber, its walls alive with writhing shadows. At the center of the room floated the core, no longer confined to the small box they had seen earlier. It had expanded, now a massive, pulsating sphere of light and darkness, its surface rippling with energy. Chek and Nkem stepped into the chamber, the temperature dropping sharply as they approached. The core seemed to regard them, its movement slow and deliberate, like a predator circling its prey. "It knows we're here," Nkem whispered. "This is where it ends." "What do we do?" Chek asked, his voice low but firm. "We destroy it," she replied, unsheathing a small blade from her belt. "But it won't let us do that easily. The core will manifest your fears, your regrets, everything you've ever tried to bury. It will try to break you." Chek nodded, steeling himself. "Let it try." As they advanced, the core pulsed violently, sending shock waves through the chamber. The ground beneath their feet trembled, and from the shadows emerged figures, twisted, monstrous versions of people from Chek's life. He saw his late father, his face contorted with disappointment, his voice ringing in Chek's ears. "You'll never be enough." Nkem, too, was confronted by her own specters, a young boy crying out for help, his voice filled with anguish. "You left me," the boy accused, his eyes brimming with betrayal. The core's manifestations closed in, their voices growing louder, more insistent. Chek's chest tightened, the weight of his past threatening to crush him. But as he looked at Nkem, struggling against her own fears, something inside him shifted. "This isn't real," he shouted, his voice echoing through the chamber. "You're not real." The figures hesitated, their forms flickering. Jack raised the glowing dagger, its light cutting through the shadows. "I'm not afraid of you anymore," he said, his voice resolute. With a surge of determination, he plunged the dagger into the nearest figure. It dissolved into smoke, and the others followed, their forms disintegrating as the core shrieked in rage. The core pulsed erratically, its energy growing unstable. Nkem approached it cautiously, her blade at the ready. "This is it," she said, glancing at Chike. "But there's something you need to know." Chike's brow furrowed. "What?" "To destroy the core completely, one of us has to give ourselves to it. It needs a soul to collapse in on itself. That's how it was created, and that's how it ends." Chike stared at her, the weight of her words sinking in. "There has to be another way." "There isn't," Nkem said firmly. "I've been here before, remember? I knew this would be the price. And I've made my peace with it." Before Chike could protest, Nkem stepped toward the core, her blade raised. But as she did, Chike grabbed her arm, stopping her. "No," he said. "You've suffered enough. Let me do it." Her eyes widened, but she saw the resolve in his face and knew he wouldn't back down. "Thank you," she whispered, stepping aside. Chike turned to the core, the dagger glowing brighter with each step he took. The whispers grew deafening, the core's energy lashing out at him, but he pressed on. "This ends now," he said, his voice steady. With all his strength, he drove the dagger into the core. The chamber erupted in light, a blinding explosion that sent shockwaves through the mansion. The walls cracked and crumbled, the shadows dissolving into nothingness. Chike felt the energy of the core surge through him, overwhelming and all-encompassing. Then, everything went silent. When Chike opened his eyes, he was lying outside the mansion's gates, the morning sun rising on the horizon. Nkem was beside him, her expression a mixture of relief and awe. "You did it," she said softly. "It's over." Chike sat up, staring at the ruins of the mansion in the distance. He felt different, as though a part of him had been left behind in that chamber. But for the first time in his life, he felt free. The morning air was crisp and cool, the kind that felt alive with promise, yet tinged with the remnants of a nightmare. Chike and Nkem walked in silence, their steps slow, deliberate, as though afraid to disturb the fragile reality they had returned to. The ruins of the mansion loomed behind them, a smoldering reminder of the horrors they had faced. The world seemed eerily normal, birds chirping, leaves rustling in a gentle breeze, and the golden hues of sunrise bathing the land in warmth. It was almost impossible to reconcile this serene landscape with the chaos and terror they had just escaped. Chike broke the silence first, his voice hoarse but steady. "Do you think it's really over?" Nkem glanced back at the ruins, her face unreadable. "The mansion is gone. The core is destroyed. But something like that, it leaves scars." She looked at him, her eyes heavy with understanding. "You'll carry it with you, just like I have. But you're free now." Chike nodded, the weight of her words settling on him. Free. It was a concept he hadn't thought much about before, freedom from fear, from doubt, from the shadows of his own mind. He had faced the mansion, its horrors, and, most importantly, himself. "I couldn't have done it without you," he said, his tone sincere. Nkem smiled faintly, a rare softness in her expression. "You did more than you think, Chike. You broke the cycle. That's something no one else has managed to do." They reached the edge of the forest, where the narrow dirt path led back to the world they knew, or thought they knew. Chike turned to Nkem, a question burning in his mind. "What will you do now?" She shrugged, a small, almost wistful smile playing on her lips. "I'll keep moving. There's always another story, another fight. Maybe one day, I'll find my peace." "And you?" she asked, tilting her head slightly. Jack looked at the rising sun, its light warming his face. I think it's time I started living, really living. No more running from my fears. No more hiding. Nkem nodded approvingly. Good. You've earned that. They stood there for a moment longer, two survivors bound by a shared nightmare, before Nkem turned and walked away, disappearing into the forest without a backward glance. Jack watched her go, a strange mixture of gratitude and melancholy filling his chest. He took a deep breath and stepped onto the path. The world felt new, every sound, every sight sharper and more vivid. For the first time in years, he felt alive, not just existing, but truly alive. As he walked, the mansion's ruins faded into the distance, and with them, the echoes of its horrors. Jack knew he would never forget, but he also knew he didn't need to be defined by the past. The future stretched out before him, uncertain but his. And for the first time, that was enough. Next time on Afro Tales TV, he found himself in a remote village with no men, only women who hated strangers. Deep in the heart of Africa, where the dense jungle gives way to hidden valleys shrouded in mist, a lone traveler stumbles upon a village unlike any other. The air is thick with an eerie silence, broken only by the whispers of women watching from the shadows. There are no men. No children. Only women whose piercing gazes carry secrets too heavy to bear. Leave, one of them warns, her voice a low growl. But the traveler, drawn by an unshakable curiosity, ventures deeper. What he uncovers is a tale of betrayal and vengeance, of a pact forged in blood and broken by despair. As night falls, the village reveals its true face. The women aren't just hostile, they're guarding something ancient, something deadly. Every step brings him closer to the truth, but also to the brink of his own destruction. Will he unravel the village's dark history and escape alive? Or will he become the latest chapter in their haunting legacy? The truth waits in the shadows. Will you dare to face it? Stay tuned to Afro Tales TV, where the vibrant spirit of African storytelling comes alive. From spine-chilling mysteries to heartwarming legends, we bring you tales that captivate, inspire, and leave you wanting more. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to keep the legacy of African stories thriving. Your next adventure awaits, dare to explore it with us.